As for why I went with the scythe, because the idea of a sapient salad carrying a giant harvesting implement was funny.
Hey everybody, I'm still very new to this and I'm making really dumb mistakes all the time. I just want to let everybody know that I forgot to introduce the guest Flameslicer in this episode. So introducing them now. They are from the Discord server and pitched their character Maple, and I love the character so much I wanted to have them on. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you. Maple is the name of is it Ghoran? How do you think you pronounce it?
Oh, I've always said it Ghoran.
Ghoran.
I don't know what the actual pronunciation is supposed to be because I don't know. I've never seen it pronounced anywhere, so that's just kind of what I guessed at.
Mm-hmm. No, I've also never seen it like written out at all. I just had a wild idea for a way to change how to do this, and I don't know if I want to change my plan entirely, and I think I'm going to.
Go for it. You're the one doing the drawing.
Yeah, fair enough. So, let's talk about Maple. Maple is a magus who, if you play D&D, you might recognize that D&D is not the same as Pathfinder. There are a lot of different things. You might say, magus, what would that be? Is that just a wizard? They're like a spell sword, basically. They're wizard fighters who can put their spells into their weapons to deliver them. So what kind of magus are you? What do you do? What level? What's the story? Let's get into it.
So, Maple was a relatively new character, as my last one died horribly to 2 natural ones in a row.
Oh no!
It's fine. They are in... The study that they go for is called Inexorable Iron, the subclass equivalent for Pathfinder 2, and Magus, every Pathfinder class names their subclasses different things.
Yeah, it's same as 5e. I think it is something they've taken from 5e to be like kind of a... Because it is a good idea to have a cool flavor name for each of the classes. I actually do like that.
Yeah, just means most people just call them all subclasses to make it a little easier, though.
Yep, it is certainly simpler.
Yeah. They are an inexorable iron magus. Essentially the kind of frontline tanks, sort of.
Yeah. They're in a game I'm playing right now, someone's playing one of those. They're bizarrely tanky for effectively a wizard with a stick.
Yes. I think it's more, honestly, it feels more like a fighter or a barbarian, but with magic instead of anger.
Inexorable Iron for sure feels that way.
Yeah, they have... Each Magus and Pathfinder has an arcane cascade stance they can go into, where they channel their magic into their melee strikes for a while, with some unique benefits based on their studies. Inexorable Irons is just regenerating temp HP. So, they go into melee with a giant fuck-off scythe, and they just take heads and names.
Continually recovering from it.
Yep. As for why I went with the scythe, because the idea of a sapient salad carrying a giant harvesting implement was funny.
I honestly agree. Like, if there's anyone who should have it, it's that. Because, like, okay, if you're carrying a knife, that's something meant to butcher flesh. So you're a flesh being with a flesh butchering stick. Plant carrying a plant butchering stick just makes sense.
Yes. And also, to be honest, it just gave off, how do I say... just giant anime nerd vibes.
The big scythe?
Listen, the big scythe with the ability to just teleport behind someone and cut them with a stick.
Magus is 100% the most anime class in Pathfinder 2.
Oh, absolutely.
Unquestionably, it is the most anime. Like, oh god, there's a shitpost someone made just pointing out how much of it relates directly to Demon Slayer. Like, you could tell the writers had just finished watching that before they started working on the mages.
Oh, yeah. I know the exact shitpost you're talking about because I sent it to someone just the other day.
It's so good.
Yes. Behold the awesome fires of infuse item, the limitless power of crafting.
Yep. This is a replacement character. What's the game? Well, what was the death? How did you bring in your plant harvester?
Yes. So the game was Pathfinder 2's Strength of Thousands campaign.
I've heard good things about that one.
It's very fun. It's big kind of magic school, but set in African setting instead of a more traditional, Harry Potter.
What you'd expect from a magical school.
Yes.
It's not your Adventure Zone graduation.
Nope. So my previous character was a summoner named Jaracel. Not going to get into that mess.
Okay.
And his death was unfortunate. We came into one of the final bosses of, I think, the third book of the full adventure. Third of six, about halfway through. And first thing my DM hits us with is the spell Phantasmal Killer. The critical fail
Two
condition
nat
on
ones,
that
no!
is... Yes, the critical fail on Phantasmal Killer is make another saving throw, fortitude save.
Yep.
If you fail the second
Yep.
one, you instantly die.
I know it well.
Natural 1, natural 2.
I know that spell
Jaracel
well.
dies turn 1 of the boss fight,
No!
and is just nothing for the rest of it.
It's such a safe spell to bring in because you don't expect it to have this, like, death condition. Like, you don't expect there to be this instant kill that's going to happen because you do have to critically fail the first one. So generally, they're going to be safe. You're not going to have your player character suddenly die. So I think while I earlier today spoke out against incapacitation spells being used against players, I think Phantasmal Killer in PF2 is a safe one. And they have to get so unlucky to die, and they have to not have any hero points left because, you know, they'd re-roll otherwise.
Yep. No, I didn't get any hero points. It was kind of a mixed session for me. Wasn't standing out too much, but wasn't doing bad.
Yep.
So I was out of those, and crit failed, and then the second one failed too. And
oh no!
like you said, I don't blame the DM for pulling it out on us because
it's a spell that seems fair on paper.
Yeah, you know, it's a good damage spell, and
Yeah.
the flavor text of show someone their worst fear to, you know, frighten them.
And Phantasmal
cool
Killer,
flavor.
the expectation is it's damage and a debuff. It'll give them the fear condition, which you want to put on your players because debuffs are fine. It's a good way of increasing threat.
Yeah.
It's good challenge. I think Phantasmal Killer, great choice for a DM to use. Holy fuck, did the 2 nat 1s make it not feel like that?
Oh no! So the character just instantly died. He set up some buffs for his allies a little bit before the fight, so like, you know, he at least contributed a bit, and that is in quotes, but a bit to things. But yeah, no, the rest of the party had to take care without him, and it was kind of rough because they were down a character.
Yeah, for the boss fight. So they survived though.
They did survive. I was the only death that fight.
So I have to feel like what I've heard about Strength of Thousands and newer paths in general is that they've fixed a lot of the issues with early on not knowing how to balance the system as well. So Age of Ashes being too hard, because that's the only one I've played, and I don't think I can think of a boss fight we would have survived a player down.
Yes. Age of Ashes, I think Agents of Ed watched.
Yeah.
And there might be one more.
I heard Extinction Curse, they were starting to get the hang of it, but it's still a bit on the too hard side, even for a challenging game like PF2 is meant to be.
Abomination Vaults and Onward is kind of the point where I'd say that they
strike a good balance of harder than 5e, but not like...
Yeah, they hit their stride with their intended difficulty.
To put in perspective how hard Age of Ashes is, everybody, we're using an optional rule called Free Archetypes that make your characters a little bit more powerful. And we have a 5th player, and the campaigns are built for 4, and we still have had a character death and regularly nearly TPK.
Yeah.
Like, don't play Age of Ashes unless you really want to, like, work your hardest to play well. Is it beatable? Totally. You don't even need to cheat like we do, but it's hard.
Yeah, the recommendation I've heard for those early modules from other DMs is typically, instead of running them as written, have the DM run through the encounters and just remake them with the modern rules, which are very good.
Yeah, I love... The modern rules are great, but oh my god. So I'm glad Strength of Thousands has a good difficulty curve, where it's still possible for a party to survive a player down.
Yes, it is very much, a character rolling 2 nat 1s on one of the only instant death spells in the game is very much not normal.
It's not expected, no. At least they died with a funny story.
Oh, they did. It was... to me, as a DM and player who has no qualms murdering my own players' characters, I had no complaints. I recognize, sometimes the dice roll that way.
Yep. Oh, that's...
So, I took it in stride and spun up Maple.
Yeah.
The true tragedy, though, is This boss fight was the last one before the character's like graduating from students.
Oh my god, so he could have graduated and been written out of the story and died before graduation. No!
Yeah, no, the character just dies like literally days before his actual in-game graduation.
Oh
which
no! That's
just
in-game tragic.
Yes, which to me is just a juicy plot point.
Oh. Oh no. Pip is saying don't threaten me with a good time. Pip, if you've only played 5e, you don't know how hard this game can be. Even if you're up for it, make sure your other 3 players are up for a challenge if you're going to take on Age of Ashes. It is so much harder than Strahd, because Strahd is like the baseline for Strength of Thousands for difficulty.
For 5e, you mean?
Yeah, like if you were to compare Pathfinder 2 to 5e, Strahd would be PF2's baseline for difficulty.
Yeah. The moderate encounter, kind of the one you're intended to use, not maybe most, but pull out most frequently.
Yeah.
That is meant to be draining. It might bring one player close to death, but unless enemies roll like gods or your players roll like utter garbage, it's unlikely to kill someone on a moderate encounter.
And there are no encounters in Age of Ashes below moderate.
Yes.
Age of Ashes has no easy encounters in it.
Yep.
From what I understand, they made the first one a little bit too hard, and we're like, okay, we know what we've done, but the problem is you can't make it get easier as you go, so this is just going to be the hard one now.
Yep, and you have to commit. Upside, once you are past especially level 1 in Pathfinder 2, it's not as bad as 5e, but level 1 in PF2, you're at most risk because one good crit will down you almost certainly.
I will also say PF2 an advantage is, we'll get to Maple in a sec, an advantage is just the fact that healing is fairly powerful, but something that makes it easier to be threatening, which I actually think is good design, is just the fact that you're punished for playing whack-a-mole and bringing the same person back up 30 times.
Yep.
Wounded condition. It will get you.
Yep, though something people sometimes mess up is, wounded condition only ever goes up by 1 if you get back up. It doesn't go to, like, your highest level of dying.
No, a lot of people do get that wrong, and that would be even more brutal. I think the way it is now is the right level of punishing, because I think, like, while I like Pathfinder 1's death mechanics, and I like 5e's for different reasons, I think the ideal death mechanics should increase the amount of times you can feel like your character is about to die, and decrease the amount of times your character could suddenly die out of nowhere. Which I think the PF2 mechanic maximizes both of those.
Yep.
Except if you roll 2 nat 1s on a Phantasmal Killer, where suddenly...
and suddenly, you just die.
Instantly, randomly dying, much more common.
To be fair, I will say, it's not really... It's not like I didn't get saves. I had 2 of them.
Yeah, you had 2 chances. It wasn't...
Like, even if I passed the second one, I still would have had a bad time. I would have lost, what, like 12d6 of health?
It's a fuck ton of health, and 3 frightened conditions, which is very bad.
Yes, but it's not, oh, you fail both? Guess you're dead.
Yeah. Oh, God. I want to get to Maple, but I real quick want to tell you, because the reason I have such experience with it, twice now, the bard in our party, played by Travis, who was just on, he has instantly killed someone, and one of them was after my character had died, Anya, Doomslayer orc with a chainsword, slaughtering everybody in Age of Ashes, and then more and more guards are piling into the room after she's died, and they are about to be overwhelmed and dead, and he's like, I need to go for broke here. Phantasmal Killer, a guy who's walking into the room like, oh, I just woke up, what's going on here? Goes to grab his weapon, rolls 2 nat 1s and dies.
Yes.
Like, the party would have wiped without it, so, you know. Phantasmal Killer, blessing for some parties, bane for others.
Unless you're my own Abomination Vaults group's bard. I DM more than I play, and Abomination Vaults is a fun module to DM, but he has had, like, 20 Phantasmal Killers. Not a single time has an enemy crit failed.
Oh my god, that is so tragic. I can't he's only cast it probably about the same number of times, and he's had it twice. Once on that guy and once on a big snake.
Yeah. Because, I mean, yeah, enemies should not double crit fail too often, but it's kind of wild not a single one has yet.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be sad if the only time it happened was on something immune to death effects?
Oh, that would be terrible.
Like, oh.
Like an undead or something?
Yeah. Sorry, didn't die, built different.
That would be a little hilarious, though. Death effects, by the way, are just the little tag that Pathfinder gives any potential instant death effect, where if you go down to one of them, no death saves, you're just dead.
Yeah, they're not common, but they're in the game, and the second part of Phantasmal Killer is. Because, of course it is. You die. So,
yeah.
Maple, Inexorable Iron, you have a scythe, is a plant person. How do you come into the party and join them after they graduate in Strength of Thousands?
So, the current plan is...
Ooh, coming in,
as far as my DM is... Yes, just coming in. After graduation, everyone gets like a year on sabbatical. Go out, do research, whatever you want.
Yeah.
The idea we're going with is Maple would have already been out on research as they've already graduated, become a teacher, what have you.
Okay.
So they're coming in after however long. Fun thing with Ghoran is they are technically immortal and have a weird perception of time. So maybe they've been gone for 1 year. Maybe it's been 5,000. Probably somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
They come back and they miss out on however long this school has been going on. They don't know anything about the party, but they join in to fill the now gaping wound left by one of the two frontliners being gone, as well as bringing in a very weird perspective on the world due to having lived for so long.
Okay.
My idea for them as a teacher was, well, I could see a magic school wanting a first-hand account on a great many historical events.
I like that.
After all, who better to ask than someone who lived during it?
Something that PF2 I know does with elves is that they start to lose the finer details of their previous lives, which is why they're not all super high level from living so long. That, like, an elf can be a high-level adventurer, forget it, become low-level again, and while they'll remember friends and faces and feelings and the vagaries of their long life, the details are forgotten. Are Ghoran kind of treated the same way? I haven't looked into them much.
Yes, much the same. They are a more recent addition to the game, or at least 2e. They existed in Pathfinder 1 and Starfinder. But specifically, Maple's heritage is an ancient Ash Ghoran, so they're a bit older, a little bit wiser, and retain more memories between their different kind of reincarnations, I'll say.
Yeah, their new journeys, basically.
Yes. But I'm specifically I'm specking into the feat tree that means they remember more and more and more of what they know.
Oh, as they go.
Yes. So
I like
specifically,
that a lot.
one of them is endless memories. You've lived 1,000 lives and done 100,000 things. You're an expert in something you remember from any one of your past lives, is how that feat works.
Okay. That's a really cool ability.
The idea is Maple remembers more than many, Maple remembers more than most Ghoran, and has maybe a bit more recollection of the different lives, even if each new incarnation is still a different enough person from whom they might have been.
Yeah.
It's also a fun bit of roleplay is Ghoran kind of due to their nature as A, plants, and B, kind of immortal, find it kind of hard to relate to anyone else because I don't know what these animals do, man.
Well, I don't know what's up
what
with
is
them.
Eating things?
I'm a plant person. I drink the sun.
Yes.
Which means I don't need rations unless we go underground, and then I need rations, and they're 10 times more expensive.
Oh, of course. But to be fair, bottled alchemical sunlight does sound a hell of a lot cooler than, I don't know, some beef jerky, I guess.
I don't know, man. To me, it just sounds like branding on Sunny D.
I mean, you're not wrong. I'm not denying it.
First thing I thought when I saw the bottled alchemical sunlight.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, hey, at the very least, if the party needs food, there's your food source. Just eat the plant person.
Oh, no. No one wants to be labeled emergency rations.
Side note, a little bit of lore carried over from Pathfinder 1. Ghoran were originally created as a plant food, or as a really nutritious plant and delicious,
Oh my
as kind
god.
of rations for a war.
So they
They
are
evolved to
delicious.
look like people, so people wouldn't eat them, but they still taste delicious.
Oh my god. Canonically delicious. Well, that's the wrong button.
Yeah, hence why I will refer to maple and other Gohrans sometimes as a sapient salad.
It's a lot more accurate now that you've explained that, instead of just a funny bit.
Yeah, no, it is canonically a sapient salad.
Oh my god. That's fantastic. So, if this is a fairly new character, do you want to talk about plans for backstory, interactions, or would you rather talk a bit more about your experiences with game mastering?
So I can go a bit into what the backstory is. I'm thinking all Gohrans have a kind of shared origin given they were created, not
Yeah.
a sort of natural thing. They were created some time ago, and in this war that kind of spawned them, lived for a while before eventually making their way out into the wider world to travel for a time. Just kind of as a broader overarching goal across all their different lifetimes. Eventually, they made their way to this magic school that they go to, the Magambia, and decided to be a history teacher. However long, who's to say? Both as a kind of observer, like just to be able to record to their own memory what they've seen personally as historical events continue on, and as first-hand source for things.
Okay.
I figured they mainly teach history, theory, explaining some of the more boots-on-the-ground detail of living through certain historical events, that kind of thing.
Holy shit, they could really use those in Cheliax right now.
Yeah, I'm sure Cheliax would absolutely hate them.
Yeah. Oh, they would definitely hate them because the royalty there has a real tendency every time someone finds records that show what the country used to be like before House Thrune took over. Those have a convenient case of flames coming up.
Yep, and gods help you if you're an elf.
Yeah. We don't like
Don't be an
elves
elf in
here.
Cheliax.
Don't be an elf in Cheliax. Cheliax, for all you Pathfinder initiates, just learning the world, is basically imagine if Rome was eviler and worshipped Satan.
Yeah. With a side of not non-existent, but no longer mentioned as much halfling slavery.
Yeah, they're trying to move away from slavery as the all the time go-to plot point, which I do understand because it was a bit all the time.
What do you mean? I love D&D 5e where absolutely everything in the Underdark is just a slaver.
Oh my god. Fantasy has a real love of slavery as a plot point. And on paper, I really do understand it because there's only so many evil acts you can do to make someone morally right to kill that also aren't so viscerally upsetting immediately. Like, because slavery is a systemic evil. It's not an immediate act of temporary suffering. What's wrong with it is that it's extended. So most of the things you can do to make someone worth just killing are more immediately horrific. So I do understand it, but like at some point maybe less you should talk about slavery is all.
Yes. And
yeah.
the reason I call out the Underdark in D&D is because everything there is a slaver for some reason.
The
Drow are
Dweregar,
slavers,
the
Myconids are
Nerfnablins.
slavers,
Yep.
Mind Flayers are slavers, Duergar, like you said, slavers.
Yep.
The only thing I think
Nerfnablins.
that lives down there that isn't slavers are the deep gnomes.
Well, those are the Snurfnablin. I think they sometimes slave,
Snurfnablin,
just not as a rule of thumb.
Ah, yes. Even better. The one exception I could think of, and they're probably still slavers.
I think maybe it was just one that I read about who was a slaver, but I've definitely read about it. Also, not Husky, I did notice you say the power of the sun, which is definitely the slogan for alchemically bottled sunlight.
Absolutely. I am a big fan of just slipping in random brand names that have no reason to exist in a world just for the fun of it.
Oh god, I'm having a lot of fun with running a Numeria campaign because all the shit that came from Androthin, the alien planet, can just be super capitalist themed and marketing based.
Oh yeah, and it's so free too.
Yep. I love Numeria as a setting. It's bonkers.
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't touched it too much with 2E yet.
I mean, it took them till the last year of PF1 to really expand it, so I think it's one of those things that they see as weird enough and setting breaking enough that they really only want to do it once they feel like all of the less game tone breaking stuff has already been done.
See, I want to agree with you, but they did just write a whole book on the or on the country that is nothing but undead for the most part.
But that's so typical fantasy. Like, sure, it's specific, but like, you have to admit that an undead country is way more of a common thing in fantasy than like the place that a spaceship fell and nuclear reactors are poisoning and a quarter of the population in the capital city are androids.
Yeah, that is true, especially given there is the goddess of AI and robots coming out of that spaceship.
Yep. It's there's a lot going on that just breaks tone, and I think as weird as it is, the Book of Undead isn't especially tone breaking.
Yeah.
Although one of the characters in our Age of Ashes game is a lich who is a Shilin worshiper and has his bones painted with like sugar skull style flowers and decoration, which is a little bit tone shifting for certain, especially given that book, I think 4 of Age of Ashes takes place in a dwarf city that specifically hates the undead.
Yeah, liches in general are given the rare tag for good reason, I think.
Yep.
Really, all the undead options.
The GM talked about it and was like, look, we're fighting slavers. He was like, cool. Then instead of doing an atrocity, I studied enough magic to find out something that would technically be an atrocity and only had to kill an evil dragon for it.
Yeah, I mean, room for interpretation with that one. At least Pathfinder's take on liches doesn't require them to eat souls.
Yeah.
You just have to commit one of the most, quote, what is it, like horribly evil acts imaginable or whatever, and then congratulations, you probably become a lich.
What he came up with for his is he basically understood the source code of magic well enough to know what would be like a fundamental sin against magic.
Okay.
And it involved killing a dragon for part of it. He's like, I don't know, details are foggy. I don't have to understand. My character understands.
Yeah. Because as a player, you don't need to worry about all the nitty-gritty. You just assume, we're like level 12. My character probably has his own ideas.
Probably. I think it's that player's like 5th character in the game because he just gets bored and wants to try something new.
Honestly, I can respect it.
Yeah, look, he's honest about it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I would require for that, is that you acknowledge what you're doing and that you just like it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the plan is introduce them as someone who's a teacher and is now going out to help provide more perspective on their journeys. What do you see as some of the lives that Maple has lived as a Goran, living for thousands of years?
I could see them having lived at least once as probably just a hermit. Just, I don't want to deal with people. I've had enough. I'm just gonna go live off in some mountain for a while
This
and not
life
talk
is
to
for
people.
me.
Yeah. I think they've definitely had at least one life. Probably where they spent it kind of incognito, trying to hide the fact that they're a plant as much as they could, and mostly sticking to wearing, wall-covering robes and stuff to try and masquerade as a human or something else.
Okay.
I feel like maybe at some point they might have tried to be a Knight of Last Wall before that fell horribly.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do when your employer explodes into the undead capital of reality.
Yeah, and also all of the refugees.
Yeah.
And by the way, none of this is made up, by the way. Pathfinder's default setting, Golarion, has some bonkers lore.
Yeah, it is all over the place, which is actually why I like it so much, because I said earlier today that my biggest issue with the D&D setting by default is that it lacks a lot of texture, that everywhere you go feels like it has a magical gimmick and not much more beyond that, whereas there's culture and history and magical gimmicks to every country in Pathfinder, and that's something I like a lot more.
think part of it just comes from 5e not really doing much with the Forgotten Realms. If you go back to older editions, the setting does have a lot going on and a lot of intrigue.
It has
it's
stuff
just,
going on, but I tend to find there's still not that much culture and history and like interaction between nations. Like everything feels very generic fantasy and like, well, what are your trade partners and exports? And I know most people don't care about that shit, but I really find a setting more interesting if like every place has all of that. And even older Forgotten Realm stuff, it's cool, but it's all big fantasy stuff, you know? Like flying cities and the nature of magic changing when the god of magic was slain. And all of that just feels like it adds less fun for me than just a country having a history and knowing who the settling population is and where their culture comes from.
Mm-hmm. Though, to be fair, some of them are a little bit more out there than others. Cough, cough, elves are aliens.
Yeah.
Rat folk are aliens.
Yeah. Elves are aliens. That's a thing.
Yeah. Rat folk, also aliens, but a little bit less of a cultural memory of being aliens because they don't live for anywhere near as long as elves.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of weird shit in Galarian lore. It's not a perfect setting, but it is probably my favorite sandbox.
Yes, it's a kitchen sink where every country is its own flavor of fantasy schlock, and I kind of like that they've at least made somewhat of an effort to try and make it maybe not cohesive, but...
I think it's cohesive enough because everything has interactions.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go grab a coffee that's been delivered to me real quick.
Go for it.
Thanks so much. Ooh. A peppermint mocha latte. Delicious.
Ooh, that sounds nice.
Yeah, I really like that about the Pathfinder setting, though, that it's just, there are interactions, and they think about the repercussions of the world changing, and every country just has something of a history that connects to at least one other country. My favorite example is Ustalov, the place that's just spooky Transylvania, but it has this cool aspect where it was originally founded by the, the Varisians, because they, being this game stand-in for Romani people, because every game needs one apparently.
Of course.
They were sick of being persecuted, and some of them decided to betray their culture and basically imitate the culture of other non-nomadic peoples by setting up a kingdom with castles and courts. But there was no land left, so to do so, they needed to chase out a group of nomads from their land, but because they weren't willing to turn on their people to the extent of taking Varisian land, they left Varisia and conquered another area that was owned by a nomadic people called the Kelids to build their kingdom. And I think that's just such an interesting history.
Yeah.
And they have, like, these deep tensions with other Varisians who still live in Varisia now, and tensions with the Kelids whose land they took.
Yep.
I just find that such a cool concept.
Oh, definitely. No, I think if I had to pick a favorite spot of the setting, oh, that's a hard one.
It's tough. I'm tempted to say Numeria just because it's what I'm running right now, and it's so fucking bonkers.
Yeah, I think I might have to go with like Sarkoris Scar.
The Sarkoris Scar is awesome.
Yes. A little bit of context there.
Yeah.
So there used to be a giant hole in the world where endless demons would just come out of the abyss called the World Wound.
Yeah.
Pathfinder, a mysterious group of adventurers that definitely wasn't a player character group. No siree, yeah, definitely not. Closed it.
It was. All the modules are canon.
Yes. In loose chronological order of when they are released.
Yeah. So they done closed it.
Yeah, they closed it, and now it's just a giant scar in the world that's only mostly infested with demons and other vile things coming out of the abyss.
I'm actually playing with it in a cool way in my Numeria campaign, where because Sarkoris... It's an interesting thing. All the places we just mentioned are related, which is what we've been talking about. Numeria is currently the homeland of a lot of the Kelids, this space sci-fi place. The place the Kelids were, who still lived their culture without all the sci-fi shit, was Sarkoris before the world exploded and demons poured out. But then a cool thing that I'm doing in my Numeria campaign with that is that they are finding out that some of the demons who are there now that the wound is closed and they're not having the energy of the abyss sustain them, are becoming native outsiders and are gaining the ability to reproduce naturally on the material plane, meaning that they can become a self-perpetuating threat still.
Nice.
And one of the players just discovered that his half-sister he didn't know about, her mother is a demon who's become a native outsider and become partly mortal.
Interesting choice.
Yeah.
Where do you think you want to go with that in the long run, or just see what happens?
He might watch this, so I can't say.
Okay.
But I think it's a fun idea to play
Find
with.
out next time.
Find out next time. Once he knows what's up, I can say what's happened with all that.
Yep.
For the time being, I think it's just a fun sandbox to play with, and that's what I love most about Golarion as a setting. I guess it makes sense that we mostly just be talking about PF2 if this is just a newer character who you haven't built the story with. What are you hoping for with them? Where do you hope that their story goes? What are you looking for?
What I'm wanting, the general direction I think they want to go in is finding out what they want to do with this incarnation, because again, more Goran stuff. Their bodies kind of rot and wither every couple decades. I want to say it's 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
And they just got a giant seed in their chest. They put in the dirt, and out comes a new Goran with most of the memories of the last one, but some personality differences.
That's very cool.
Whatever that's.
I didn't know any of this. I haven't looked into them at all. I was just like, oh, cool, new plant people. Bye.
Yeah, no, I think that's just kind of a general trend with Pathfinder's ancestries. At first, they look kind of, not too interesting, and then it's like, wait, what?
Oh, yeah, like I see pug people, and I'm like, oh, I don't care at all. They're pug people. And then you learn about their lore, where they were created to be the most loyal servants of the human god, because pugs were the most loyal thing you could think of, I guess. And it's just adorable, so they have loyalty to a fault as a part of their character, usually.
Yes, and also they're all pacifists, because why would they want to hurt anyone? They're just good boys.
Yeah, they will only use violence against things like the undead.
Yeah. So, or just gods. Osiren is a weird part of the setting.
Look, the stuff that just connects weirdly to our world is a big thing. There's a portal to Russia,
Yeah, Baba Yaga is an isekai protagonist in Golarion, and I'm not even
Oh my god, you're right!
She's just an isekai protagonist.
Oh my god, that's true. That's wild. Oh yeah,
she is an isekai protagonist from actual Russia, on Earth.
Yeah, Pip, there are a ton of crazy ancestors in PF2. In just my time playing, I've seen Pug Person, Lich, Robot who turn into Gun and has Gun.
Konrasu are my favorite to just confuse people, because I still don't know what the hell is going on.
They're nonsense. I truly... Yeah. The Konrasu are like a core of magic that build a weird wooden body around them, and I cannot make sense of them.
I don't think anyone fully can, which is exactly why someone is bringing one as a player character to the Gatewalkers campaign I'm going to start soon, trademark.
Of course they would.
To be fair, it makes sense given the campaign pitch, because I think there's some cool stuff you could do with that.
Konrasu are one of the ones that I'm like, that's neat that they have it. I have no inclination to play this at all.
Likewise, the player's desire for it was he had the idea of playing a Konrasu/fireworks tech, both because, plant-based magic thing likes burning.
Yep. I mean, hey, same bit as plant-based magic thing like Scythe.
Yes. I can't say part of why I was like, yeah, go for it, was because, I did the same shit. I can't criticize that.
I understand.
I respect it. Plant Bros unite.
Plant Bros unite. Plant Bros rise up.
Indeed. Honestly, Plant Bros rise up, or just Leshies. More people need to play Leshies.
Leshies are great. They're just, if you've seen The Witcher, you're thinking of the wrong thing. Imagine adorable little people that are all plant-themed in some very silly way.
Yes, they are tiny little nature spirits. The personal favorite I saw was I ran a one-shot to just introduce some people to Pathfinder, and someone brought me a Leshy witch named Kumquat, with a Leshy familiar that they named Baby, that they just found at some point.
Okay, no, I will do you one better. My friend Kristen, he was on here a little earlier, played a Leshy, I think Duskwalker is what they're called, the people who are given another second chance at life. He was a forest that burnt down, and he was a gray gourd with flaming blue eyes inside to look like a jack-o'-lantern.
Oh, nice.
He was a leaf druid, so he had his Leshy familiar, and we decided to start at level 2 so that everyone could have their archetypes, because people had very specific builds they wanted to play. So as much as earlier I said you don't have to start at level 2 in PF2, if you want to start with your archetypes, you should.
And
so
it's fine for people who know the game better.
So he picked Beastmaster archetype and chose a tree folk as his animal companion.
So he's just a walking forest, basically.
He's a walking forest. He was a pumpkin with a pet leaf and a pet tree man.
Perfect.
Yep. What kind of magic do you think Maple's going to use, by the way?
I have picked out some, not all of their spell list. It is mostly going to be... Actually, let me just pull this up for you.
Okay. I imagine Stone Skin's on there because Inexorable Iron loves Stone Skin.
I actually do not have Stone Skin.
It's so good.
I know it is, but also, I don't know, it doesn't fit the aesthetic I'm going of, like...
Fair enough, you're a plant, I guess.
Plant.
You know, if you're a plant, I understand not getting Stone Skin.
Yeah, also, I'm going for more of an autumn aesthetic with them.
Fair.
Hence, like, maple leaf and all that.
Yeah. Hence the color palette I'm going for with this very weird style. I was going to do something so typical, and then just before I started, I was like, what if it's weird?
Yeah, go nuts. I mean, the book that's coming out next month is going to have wood armor I planned on giving them, so it checks out.
Isn't the Elemental book also coming out with Druids of Metal, which I think is rad?
Yes. That is coming out
That's
far later in the year, though, and honestly, the more hype thing is Kineticist as a class.
I'm so mixed on Kineticist because I've always found it so odd that they, in both editions, have a system that is entirely unique and unlike anything anyone else has.
I think that's kind of interesting, though.
It's so interesting, but it's very bizarre.
Oh, absolutely. But, most of their spell list is a little bit of metal theme, like magnetic acceleration, haste, and, just... Gods, what else do I have? Oh, yeah. Fire. Lots of fire.
That makes sense. Then also easy to visually represent in an appealing way. So good news for me.
Yes. Fireball, Blazing Dive, my beloved.
I haven't used Blazing Dive yet.
It's
I haven't checked in a lot of new spells because I don't play spellcasters.
Listen, so context. Blazing Dive, you basically do a fighting game move. You fly 15 feet in the air, and then fly in a straight line towards an enemy, and wherever you land, you just explode with some fire.
Oh, that is great, though. I do love that, though. That is a fantastic aesthetic.
It is, and I love the idea of them being surrounded in, like, burning leaves that come off them.
Oh, that's a good way to flavor it, too. I love that.
Yes. And also, you know, Magus Spell Strike. Not only do they explode you, while they follow that up with chopping your head off with a scythe.
Yep. Part of the kick is a scythe. Don't ask how.
Yep.
One of
I've
my
almost
favorite...
considered...
Sorry, you go first, and then I'll add in my note.
Yeah, I have considered once, just for the hell of it, seeing if I could find a way to make, like, an actual farming implement scythe look cool instead of, like, the fantasy one that makes no actual sense if you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, if you add a handle, basically a farming scythe.
Well, that, and also, farming scythes are turned 90 degrees, you know?
Yeah,
So, I want to see if I can find a way to design, or find a character design for whom that could actually seem like a sane weapon, because
if you'd mentioned it earlier, I would have tried. It's just too late in the game.
Oh, yeah, no. No, for Maple, I was just going with the classic fantasy one, because honestly, I like the aesthetic.
Just having a lot of fun playing with autumn colors for this, I think.
Yeah, no. I live in Michigan, so we won't get more specific than that. But
all right, instead of you live in a place.
Yeah, that was redundant as fuck. But,
look, some people live in an ephemeral concept.
Indeed.
And they're called chaos gods.
No, but I always have a thing for autumn colors and autumn aesthetics because we typically have tons of forests and stuff here, so it gets really pretty come autumn.
I'm
And I
over
figured
on,
I could make a character based on it.
I'm over
And you
on
were
the
saying?
West Coast
Sorry.
in Vic. No, I just thought you were done. My bad. And around British Columbia, we don't really get that much autumn because, like, so many of the plants in this weird-ass climate just don't understand winter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a half autumn where there's a lot of red, but not, like, entire forests of it.
Yeah.
It's just a very peculiar climate.
Interesting.
It's also a weird place where grass is bright green in the winter and yellow in the summer.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, and I have to explain to my friends when I was describing in D&D once, I was like, the bright green summer grass, and they're like, grass is yellow in the summer. No, you don't. We don't live in a normal place. That's not the normal thing.
Yep.
Sure, sometimes yes, but winter is not where you expect lush green grass.
Yep.
Oh man. Yeah, I love the aesthetic idea though. Like the thinking of all the fire spells as having these flaming red leaves coming out with it is just so cool to think about.
Yes, and brings a bit of fun, like, internal character contrast.
Yeah. In fact, it's cool enough that I think I'm gonna do something with that. How well can I draw a maple leaf? I am Canadian, so the answer should be well.
I mean, you got to prove yourself now that you mentioned it.
All right, looks like I mostly remember what maple leaves look like. When you do the fill tool, it doesn't look as nice. Okay. All right, I'm going to be working on that now because cool fire effects.
Sure.
What else you want to talk about for maple? Is there any other details you have that you have plans, or is there just some other cool Pathfinder lore or GM experiences you want to share?
Just GM experience-wise, it's been kind of wild GMing for a bunch of newbies recently because with the OGL drama, which I'm not going to get into, I'm sure you discussed it earlier, and I'm sure everyone who's
I
even
barely talked about it earlier, but
okay.
It's fair. Like everybody knows about it. It's what's going on.
Yeah, take it face value. You know what that is. If you don't know what that is, Legal Eagle put out a good little video summarizing a little bit of it. And he gives way better sources where people really deep dive into some of that mess.
Legal Eagle is fantastic.
Yes, but
if you have any issue ever involving law, just watch the Legal Eagle video. If there's any news involving the law you want to know about. Yeah,
he comes out with stuff concerningly quickly.
Man's fast.
But yeah. Where was I going with this?
GMing for new players because OGL.
Yes. It's been fascinating seeing what players who've never played Pathfinder 2 assume going in and ends up being wrong, and seeing a few people who have never played any TTRPG come in and what their experience with this game is like, because on my end as a DM, I do love Pathfinder 2. It's my favorite system, but it is not one I think I'd cut a lot of people's teeth on if I had to pick like one game I'd introduce someone with tabletop games with.
Yeah, I think if they really want complex stuff, my leaning is 5e. It just is a really well-built game for specifically learning on. I think the worst thing about 5e, in my opinion, is just the lack of content means I got bored very quickly. But other than that, like, I really do like it as a system. I think it's well designed and it's good for teaching people.
Yeah, I think Pathfinder actually has ended up being a bit easier because in a lot of ways, Pathfinder 2's rules are very clear. They're very easy to look up and easy to find. Whereas with 5e, I mean, explain bonus action spell casting to someone that's the weird who's never played a game before.
I think the basics of 5e are simpler, like the fundamentals, but there's more edge cases in 5e than there is in PF2.
Yes, and they're weird to find when you find them. Stuff like the whole it's like surprise as a thing in 5e.
Oh my god, surprise is a thing in 5e. It makes
surprise.
It's wildly simple when you put it together. Like, have you seen the thing where someone recently pointed out how well it's explained and it's the exact same rule in the playtest for 5e?
Yes.
It's so good! And it's the same rule as is already in 5e, but it's just not in the fucking book anymore.
Yes, it's all surprises in 5e is when your party is surprised, there is no firm definition, because gods help you if you tried to put a firm definition on surprised. The enemies, or whoever is being surprised, gets a condition called surprised. And on the first round of initiative, they don't get their turn.
Yep.
That's it.
That's it.
That is not that complicated.
It's so simple,
and
and it's explained that flatly in the D&D 5e playtest, and somehow it didn't make it into the book.
Yes. So a lot of people were really confused by that, because it's just unnecessarily difficult to parse.
I think I've got to create a flow of action to follow for these leaves.
I think you could maybe do
Thinking like this.
maybe have them, yeah, kind of coming in towards the hair where they probably fall off. Well, hair, they're probably vines.
I'm thinking above them, because I'm thinking now that you've mentioned the dive, that this is at the bottom of a dive. So I'm going to have the leaves trailing behind and up. I've entirely changed what I had in mind for this over the conversation because of things you've said, but...
Hey, I mean, got to keep you on your toes somehow.
Yeah, look, I'm having fun with it. There's nothing I love more than suddenly having to change what I'm doing because of a better idea.
I feel that on a spiritual level.
It is the most fun I can have is when I'm like, everything I've done is worthless because there's a better thing to do now.
No, I feel that with photography so much, especially if I'm doing something like crowds or street photography where it's just constantly changing and I can never pin anything down because it's just what is in front of me. How do I make this interesting?
Absolutely. That sounds like a lot of fun with photography. Just I can imagine that feeling, how good it would feel if you're just waiting for something to line up, you realize it's not going to, and then the solution would come into your head. That would feel incredible.
Yes, or genuinely there have been a surprising amount of shots where I'm just gonna take a picture and see what happens, and then I do all my stuff on film, so when I develop it and scan it and all that, oh, this actually turned out awesome, what the heck? I thought this would just be a throwaway thing. Oh no, this turned out great.
That has to be such a rewarding feeling with film because you really don't know then.
Yes, and the whole reason I even do film is honestly because I am an ADHD zoomer. I need less instant gratification in my life, and I figured film photography was a pretty good way to get there.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a good way to keep yourself motivated, is by having that delayed gratification be built into your medium.
Yep. Plus, it forces me to think a bit more about things because, you know, with photography, especially most people use like a cell phone, it's pretty easy to just not think too much. You point the camera at something, take the picture, you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, film kind of forces me to not do that and think really hard about composition, framing, lighting, the art shit.
Yeah. For a similar reason, I like digital painting as one of my main mediums. I'm not really going to do it on stream because digital painting is so boring to watch because it's very slow and the product looks really ugly for a long time. So I think it's one of the worst things I could do for streaming. But it's so fun because it does look ugly for a long time, and you just have to put faith that at the end of this, it's going to be okay.
Yep. It's why speed painting is so popular, because you get to kind of...
Yep.
You see the evolution, but it comes together in a few minutes instead of however many hours someone might put into the work.
Absolutely, because it can easily take like 20 hours to get a good painting out, and that's digital, not even traditional. Oh, God.
Oh, I have absolutely nothing but respect for people who do traditional artwork. Because, man, does that seem like so much time and work and skill.
Yeah, that's the main reason I do digital, is just time. Like, the amount of time you'd have to put into each piece, like, I can get so much more done this way.
Yep. And especially if you have to do something like certain oil or acrylic paints that you need to wait to dry between layers. Not that you need to do layers in a traditional painting, but
you
some
often
people will.
do.
Yeah, depending on what you're going for. So, that leaves you with a lot. Whereas, silver line into photography. I point the camera at something, I get the focus.
So
yeah, you were saying?
To hop back a bit, though, you were talking about your experiences, first of all, new players with the system and players who are new to PF2, but then also I want to get your take on what you think are some of the best TTRPGs for new players.
So, yeah, with new players into PF2, it's interesting seeing how they respond to things and, like, how different individuals take the crunchier rule set.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually of the mind that Pathfinder 2 isn't necessarily. I don't think it's crunchier than 5e, and that there's not much of a difference in the math you do or anything.
No, the biggest crunch.
It's just more.
The biggest math difference is, yeah, you're adding bigger numbers, and also that you need to change your character sheet every level. It's why PF2, I only use digital character sheets. I despise having to erase every number on my sheet every level up.
I can respect that.
It's my least favorite thing about the system.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth.
Sorry, you go.
Oh no, you go first. You were speaking first.
I was just gonna say that mechanically, I really do like adding your level to everything. Just the actual act of erasing everything and redoing it is so frustrating to me.
To be fair, proficiency without level does exist, and it is pretty well balanced on the whole. That is a variant rule for Pathfinder where you just don't add your level to your proficiency mod
It's
for
a
things.
much more 5e-like situation where you feel like little dudes can be more of a threat and big dudes don't have nearly as much power advantage. It's got its own recommendation for threat levels, which I like. That actually works out pretty well. The biggest issue I have is you kind of need to talk to your table and be like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be having animal companions and summon spells for this one because they're the only thing that act out of balance, I think, in that rule set.
Yeah, because animal companions are balanced around being, if I had to ballpark, like 50% of a martial character.
For damage output, their hit is like only a couple below, but yeah, their damage output is about 50% usually.
Yeah, they're meant to be weaker than martials because they're not full player characters. They're animal companions. They're not supposed to be as strong as PCs.
Yeah, and just the second you remove level to proficiency, action economy on the board means a lot more, just like in 5e.
Yep. Not that action economy on the board doesn't mean a lot in Pathfinder.
Oh, it does.
Too.
Just a lot less than 5e, where it basically chooses the winner.
Yes. Because the upside to not having to doing proficiency on level in Pathfinder 2 is it makes it really easy to scale things up. So if I throw an enemy that's like 3 levels higher than the party at them as a solo boss, it's going to be a scary solo boss.
It has a 15% higher chance to hit, 15% higher chance to crit, 15% higher chance to pass saves, 15% less chance to be hit. All of those 15% from 3 levels add up to be a huge threat.
Yes. And crits in this game, on the one hand, they feel amazing when you crit. On the other hand, oh boy, can it hurt when you get
crits in
crit.
Pathfinder 2. I hated switching between Pathfinder 1 and 5e is so goddamn frustrating because it's like, okay, in this game, the bonus and the base dice get doubled, but the extra dice don't get doubled. And in this game, the bonus doesn't get doubled and the base dice get doubled, but the bonus dice do get doubled. And PF2 is like, I don't know, fuck it, just double it. Just have double.
Yeah. The only exception is like fatal or deadly weapons get extra dice.
No, fatal is crazy. But it should be because it's on weapons that are otherwise pretty bad. Like guns are bad until you crit, and then you're like, oh, that's why I have this.
Listen, I cannot tell you how much I wanted to make Gun Magus work.
I really love Gun Magus in theory, and I wish it could be done.
Okay. You can make it work okay if you are willing to accept not spell striking every turn.
Yes.
Spell strikes being the reason Magus is the single target damage king in Pathfinder.
I will say, I have a build that I do damage nearly what the Magus in our party does, more than him if he's using cantrips.
Yes. But the thing is...
in one big strike, I mean.
Oh, Inventor then, if I had to guess?
Ranger. Gravity weapon, fire dedication, power attack.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yep.
That'll do it.
Because gravity weapon, extra damage per damage dice on your first attack of the round. Precision ranger, extra damage on first attack of the round. Power attack, extra damage dice.
Yep. That'll do it.
It is the beautiful big whack.
Yes. Magus is just fun because, honestly, the only reason I haven't played a Gun Magus is because I feel like Fatal D12 spell strike crits would be a drug I would never be able to get off of.
Play chaotic character, put axiomatic on it, which is the one where a 50% chance a crit is minimum damage, 50% it's max damage, and that's a drug you shouldn't quit.
Ah, that sounds amazing, though.
Yeah, Axiomatic I'm putting on my sword once it has +3 because I calculated Anya, the big whack character. Her minimum crit is 56, which honestly, her regular power attacks are stronger than that, which is funny. Her maximum crit is over 200.
Nice.
Yeah, that's with precision, gravity weapon, revving the chainsword serrating rune, power attack, all put together. It's like a 240 damage crit or some shit. It's so dumb.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, just to clarify for anyone that might be more used to 5e, you don't have to do any of this stuff. You
No.
can just play any martial, slap something together, and you will get a competent build.
Yeah.
But if you really want just stupid numbers and are willing to invest hard enough in stupid numbers, you can make stupid numbers
And it's worth noting, this build I've talked about isn't overpowered because sure, her damage output is higher after all this, but I need to... If I don't get the drop on someone so that I can use Hunt Prey and cast Gravity Weapon before a fight starts, I am costing 2 extra actions and an extra 2 actions per round to reach my max damage output. Like, there is a huge cost for this build. It isn't even that good. It's just I'm addicted to the drug of big number.
Yes. Magus... I am a firm believer that Magi don't need to spend every turn spell striking, but Magus pays for their single target DPS king status in very limited resources.
Yep.
To get your biggest spell strikes, you need to spend spell slots on spells.
Yep.
And Magus only gets 4 of those, kind of like a 5e warlock.
Yeah.
Well, 4 plus a couple for utility stuff. And they pay for it in action economy. Not only do you have to spend 2 of your 3 actions on a round just spell striking, you then have to recharge it either with a limited per fight ability per fight resource called focus points, or in literally just spending an action doing nothing but recharging your spell strike.
Yep. It's it's both of these builds we've talked about, as much as they would sound busted on paper, if you're new to PF2, you will be just as good as them just using an out-of-the-box fighter. You just, instead of being crazy, insane, powerful for bursts that you've put a lot of work into, you're just going to be competent and good.
Yeah, just consistently.
Yeah.
And it doesn't require as much shenanigans to do so.
It's just if you have a bit of mastery over the game and you want to have a funny time. Big numbers.
Yes.
Oh, man. It's something I talked about this earlier today. I really, really love that PF2 encourages uniqueness and flavor as what they reward mastery of the game with instead of power. Because, holy shit, the power level difference in a min-max character in 5e, or God forbid Pathfinder 1 or 3.5, is...
Don't even get me started on PF1.
PF1, 3.5, if you play 3.x, where you mix in all of the things from 3.5 and Pathfinder 1... a power-built character is stronger than the stat-blocked gods in D&D 3.5.
Yeah, a min-max to shit Pathfinder 1 or 3.5 or 3.x wizard. Here's how you DM for them. You get up, you sit in the wizard spot, and you let the wizard take the DM chair, because that's how
you
that's
sir
how
can
much
decide
you
what happens. It's much easier if I just acknowledge it.
Yes, just they're gonna take over the game anyway. You may as well just accept it and make your own life a little easier in the process.
If one of your friends who's a real nerd tells you that they really want to play 3.5 or Pathfinder 1, and that it's actually really, really good, I feel like 90% of the time they just miss the min-max power they once held.
Yeah, I'm not gonna even get into the whole how much I dislike the Ivory Tower design and how much of a mess that is.
I built a character with a movement speed of 10,000.
Yeah, or there's the stupid meme build of a level 1 kobold with infinite stats.
Oh god, I've heard of that, but I haven't heard it in so long, so I don't even remember how it happens.
I completely forget it myself, and I've never actually played any amount of 3.5 or Pathfinder 1. I've just kind of osmosis and or
right, you
seen
said you're
enough of it
Gen
on the
Z.
internet.
By the time you were gaming, games were already good.
Yeah, honestly, that is how I feel sometimes. Because like, oh, what games did I cut my teeth on? 5e, which yeah, I think 5e has its problems, and I
Yeah.
don't love it as a system nowadays. But I would take 5e over 3.5e every day of the week as a new player.
Absolutely. There are things I love about those systems that I will always miss, but I just can't go back because there's so many quality of life improvements. I don't want move silently and hide to be separate skills.
Yes. Or different types of AC for touched versus ranged.
Look,
like, why do we need to track these separately?
It's not touch versus. It's touch, flat-footed, and standard. Touch is if you just need to touch the guy. Flat-footed's if he can't dodge, and standards if he can do both. I will defend that. It's complicated, but it's good. Guns hitting touch AC made sense.
Well, listen, in my head, that's the same thing as like, oh, Thaco was fine, guys. You just have to take your mod, subtract it from the enemy's AC, and then if you roll over a number, it's fine.
It's like, not in your mind. These are the exact same mentality.
Yes.
It's just one I express and one I reject.
Yes.
That's the only difference.
I don't even think Thaco was like the worst thing ever, because once you know how to compute it, it's just... it's a little bit of subtraction.
It's table slowdown is the big issue, which is the same reason they rightfully got rid of touch armor class.
Yes, and it's a bit of design incongruity, right? You don't have different... Okay, you do have different saving throws depending on what the enemy's doing, but you don't have different types of each saving throw. You just here's the saving throw.
You didn't play PF2 because it did. Charisma-based will saves were a pretty common thing for abilities that relied on emotion.
Okay, so in my head, though, that's just like the 5e system where it's basically, oh yeah, you just use a different mod.
Yeah.
Or you just break it out into its own separate save rather than, oh yeah, roll will
parentheses charisma. Was it complicated? Yes. Was it min-maxable? Yes. But it was ours.
Yep. And I mean, hey, I'm not going to invalidate, like, the real experiences or fun people had playing those games.
You can have tons of fun with those games.
I'm just going to say, though, I don't want to play a game in which sacred geometry was a feat that could ever hit paper.
All right.
No.
Oh god.
I don't think any Pathfinder 1 player I've ever met is able to really defend sacred geometry because it's just so stupid.
I can't even remember what it did. All I remember is it was something where I was like, "Oh no, not that."
Basically, roll a bunch of d6 equal to your ranks in, I think, knowledge engineering or some knowledge skill, and then depending on what level of meta magic depending on what level your spell would be after applying whatever the fuck meta magics you want, roll those d6 and then add, subtract, multiply, divide the numbers you get to try and reach one of a few numbers on a table. Those numbers being prime factors of some other thing.
Oh no, yeah, that's terrible. Yeah, I remember now.
Yes. Was it min-maxable? If you had a player who could compute prime factors and multiple digits of addition, subtraction, multiplication, division in their head at once, I mean, yeah, probably.
Probably.
But the kind of person that could do that in their head wasn't getting picked for dodgeball in school.
Look, that's not a bad way to put it. Oh man, I miss those days of insane how did this get to paper design. But yeah, no, 5e, for all the flack I will give it on the lack of updates, taking 10 years to validate one class as existing after it got 5 years of playtest, to add one new class to the game. It did a lot of good to the tabletop gaming world.
Yep.
And the ways I insult it are almost exclusively a feeling of missed opportunity.
Yes, because, like, you look at stuff like Level Up 5e or Advanced 5e, and you could see the potential. Even if you just look at Base 5e, you could think, I think there's a good core here, they just need to flesh it out or fill in some of the gaps more.
I straight up...
Yep.
Ranger and Warlock making it out of playtest the way they did is an inexcusable mistake in game design. Because, like...
No, because...
They both feel so good in concept, but the way they're conceptualized doesn't come through in how they're played at all. And I think, like, that's difficult for me to look at something that its play experience isn't reflective of the concept.
Well, in my head, the way I see those classes is they are designed for the game 5e's designers intend for 5e to be used,
Yeah.
which isn't the game that anyone is playing.
That's fair. I think that might be a fair way to look at it. Because, yeah.
You look at 5e's design, you look at 6 to 8 medium encounters per long rest. You look at, we expect every class to have 2 short rests between long rests, and I think, so the game Dungeons and Dragons is clearly focusing in on dungeons, or like getting to dungeons, exploring in and around dungeons, survival and attrition, that kind of thing. Which is a valid thing for a game to focus on, you know, that's fair. It's not an invalid design decision. Problem, who the fuck plays that way?
The other issue beyond that, though, like, even if it was played I'm accidentally zooming in, the exact way they'd intended, I find in the play experience, when I've been a warlock in a dungeon, you end up thinking, okay, in theory, my advantage as a spellcaster once we reach high levels is I have more high-level spell slots per day than the wizard, because he casts his high-level spell slots and he's out after 1 or 2. I cast mine, I have 4 nukes, and then I get 4 back. And that's what I get in exchange for not having a catalog of low-level spells, which is a cool thing in theory. I like it in theory. But even in a dungeon, you can't be certain what rooms you're going to have a long rest in when you're not. And it feels like you don't get to be that 8 nuke a day character that you get read on the tin, because you're always anxious you're not going to get the short rest to restore those spell slots.
Yes, unless you sell your soul to Eldritch Blast cheese.
Yep, in which case you are playing the least interesting class in the game unless you take the pull and push one, in which case at the very least you have battlefield interaction.
Yes, although, hey, let's not be too zesty here. They're only invalidating the class design of like 2 or 3 classes with 1 cantrip.
Oh boy, yeah.
Sorry, let me clarify. 1 cantrip that has potentially almost a quarter mile of range.
Yep.
And does as much damage as a longbow, but is infinite use, and automatically scales and lets you hit multiple targets.
Oh, Eldritch Blast with... It's such a shame what warlocks are, because there's so much about the concept that's so appealing, but they really aren't what is there conceptually.
Also, 4E has problems, but I think 4E kind of did Warlocks better by virtue of not really having to give a shit about spell slots.
From what I've looked into 4E not at all, but from what I understand about 4th edition is that the way it achieved balance was by making there be like an archetype of what the class would fit into, designing that as a class, and then each class is a reflavor of the archetype. And I just think that's...
More or less, which it has problems, but one thing I think you do get is you don't need, or they don't balance super hard about attrition, because you just have a bunch of different powers on cooldowns. One's a per fight ability, a per day ability, whatever. And spell slots aren't really a problem.
I gotta respect PF2 more because it managed to be an incredibly balanced game with incredible variety and diversity instead of by sacrificing variety and diversity.
Oh no, I think PF2 is the better game by far, and I have
I didn't think you were going to argue with me there.
Oh no, I have no nostalgia for 4E, and I recognize this game has some cool ideas, which you can kind of see echoed in Pathfinder 2.
Yeah, Pathfinder 2...
But the game as a whole is a flaming mess.
Pathfinder 2 did copy the best ideas from 4E. It's a lot of where the coolest shit in Pathfinder 2 comes from. Like, there wasn't nothing to 4E's ideas. Giving marshals things they could do was a good idea.
Yeah, it just happens to be, bleh.
Yeah.
I just bring up 4E when discussing Warlock because there is no Pathfinder equivalent to Warlock.
The closest is
Psychic,
Witch, and
Psychic doesn't really count.
I would say Witch is close. It's close flavor, but it doesn't go for the same interesting mechanics.
They're totally different mechanically.
Yeah.
A Witch is a full caster with some unique debuffs and familiar. They have the similar flavor of a magic patron, but that's really it as far as mechanics go.
Yep.
Also obligatory, if you like a Witch in Pathfinder 2, go buy Witches Plus. It just makes the class better.
Oh, really? I didn't know that was I didn't hear about that.
It's third-party publisher content. very well balanced. I allowed
Protected
it on my
by
tables.
the Open RPG license.
Indeed. But the gist is basically some errata, some suggested changes, a few new options, just things that make Witch a more complete and more whole class, in my opinion. Not that Witch needs them to be good by default, but a lot of Pathfinder players do feel that 2E's Witch, by default, has a bit too much of its class's power budget locked up in the familiar, which isn't invalid, because Witches do get the best familiar in the game. But not everyone's looking to be a familiar mancer. They just want someone with a magic sugar daddy.
Yeah.
So yeah, Witches Plus, good stuff. Go buy it on Pathfinder Internet. It's like $5-6.
This is
also has Foundry support for people who use that.
This is me bringing my gender bias of RPGs in again, but I feel like Witch supports the way I have seen so many women want to play RPGs where they want their familiar to be more important than it is, and Witch said, you know what, now it can be.
Oh, absolutely. I know a lot of people who love just having a cute little thing by their side, even if they don't.
I will say, I know men like that too. I absolutely know men like that too. 90% of the people I've met who really want their familiar to do a lot have been women.
I mean, yeah, that's a whole side discussion on how gender roles and norms might impact people's preferences and what they do and don't enjoy and stuff.
None of it's biological. It's just expectations.
Yes. Hence, what is it, like your kind of the stereotypical book targeted towards men is like a power fantasy of some sort. The stereotypical novel targeted towards women is more often going to be a bit more intrigue or social based.
Most often, but social stuff can be a power fantasy too. It's just
oh yeah,
a different power.
Yeah. Different how do I say? I know there's a name for what I'm thinking of targeting here, but the markets prefer different things is what I'll say. Just on the broadest scale. Not to say that there aren't exceptions, there are zillions of them.
I mean, humans couldn't be as complicated as they are and have there not be exceptions to any statement.
Oh, of course. What do you mean? I think... No, the only statement to which I can say is there are exceptions to everything. I think there probably aren't too many exceptions to that.
Probably.
There probably are, but I don't know of many.
Because, like, if you were to make any broad statement about humanity, I'm pretty sure I could say people love breathing, and you'd find 3 guys who are like, I despise that I gotta do this shit.
Yep. I mean, to be fair, it would be convenient if you could go to space without needing to carry oxygen with you.
You know what? That's fair.
It'd be nice, but, like, I'm not gonna complain about having to breathe air.
Look, I'm a fan of the feeling of a good breath of air, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But... Maybe it's not as common a club as I thought it was. Maybe there are a lot of people who really, really hate this shit.
Yes, the old anti-breathers.
You've heard of anti-vax. Get ready for anti-breath.
I'm sure it exists.
Positive it exists. I mean, I brought it up to say I'm positive it exists.
Mm-hmm.
Humans are a diverse lot, and there's no way to lump us in easily.
Yep. Other than they're all human.
You know what? True, unless you count people who say that they're another species at heart seriously, and I don't want to get into that at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it is valid. People can identify as whatever they like. I'm not here to invalidate that, but also that does not change the fact that you are still by all means a human being physically. There is, as of this moment in time, no easy way to change that part of biology.
Yep, until we really get good with CRISPR.
Yeah. Honestly, if we ever... listen, I am 100% sure that once humanity involves, like, transhumanist-level body mods, the first thing that's going to happen is people are going to want to be furries.
Oh, 100%. And the first few furries are going to be in for a really rough time because they are not going to figure out how to manifest the looks right for everybody. A lot of times it's going to go wrong. People are not going to be expecting how much sweat is important to being a human and how difficult it is to live without.
Yep.
Look, eventually it's going to be fine for them. It's not going to start out okay.
Oh, definitely not. But you know that there are going to be people that sign up just at the merest whiff of the idea of, oh, I could have, like, fox ears and a fluffy tail.
Hell yeah, I'm in. Oh, God. The first few people who go for it. Furries out there, wait a couple rounds. Don't go for the first CRISPR treatment they offer you.
Yeah. I was gonna say, oh, but mate, they might not. No, furries just seem to find money, even if they.
Oh,
I don't know where they come up with it, but seriously, the prices and amount of income I've seen some furry artists making is moderately terrifying.
If you want to make a killing as an artist, don't do what I'm doing. Don't stream. Go draw for furries. AI art hasn't even figured out how to make furries look good yet.
That's its own entire.
That's a bucket of worms. Maybe we shouldn't get into.
The shortest possible version of my take, as someone who releases all of his stuff under public domain, I don't have copyright on any of my works by my own will, is... I mean, I might not have an objection to my stuff being used for AI, but I feel like people should have to opt into that kind of thing.
Yeah, it definitely shouldn't be an opt-out service anywhere. Like, that's for sure not how it should work.
Like, if there are people like me who don't care if their art's used for that or whatever else, take my stuff, don't credit me, I don't care, I give everyone explicit permission to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine, but if someone wants that stuff, you should respect that.
Absolutely. You know, for having had no idea what I was doing for this entire time and just pulling the rug out from under myself to chase an idea, kind of liking this vibe.
I know, it's going pretty well.
All right. So I think a while ago I wanted to head back to this. I put a pin in it. I did remember the pin for once. I wanted to talk to you about what systems you do recommend for new players.
There are many, there are multiple. So I will admit this is my own biased selection based on games I've played, I've run, I've tried.
Yeah. I will say,
I am sure that anyone could come up with a zillion other games that would be great for new players.
I have played very few smaller RPGs. Most of what I play is fairly rules heavy. That tends to be where I'm more comfortable. So this is new territory for me for the most part.
Yeah. So games I like and would recommend for new folks. I cannot shill Savage Worlds strongly enough.
Okay.
Not because it's super rules light, though you can explain the rules in about 2 pages of a comic. In fact, I'm tempted to post the comic in chat, because someone has already done that for me.
Oh, dang.
But also, Savage Worlds is a mid-crunch. I treat it as like my own personal true neutral as far as things go.
Yeah,
mid-crunch universal system meant to be hacked for any setting you could imagine.
Nice. Okay, so it's very, very setting light, so you can just play with that however you want and really adapt it.
Yes. It has kind of a default setting tied to it called Deadlands, a Weird West thing, which sure is weird and sure is Western.
What more can I ask for?
Yeah, Deadlands is a strange setting. Just look it up. I cannot do it justice in any short amount of sentences, but yeah, that's kind of the default setting. But Savage Worlds handles what it does well is it's super easy to hack by design. You're meant to be able to just, oh, I want to do something new that does this. Yeah, sure. It takes you like 5 minutes. Super easy.
Nice.
And you actually can use it to run more or less any setting or rough style of adventure you might like, because the game is built to support that and to help people out with it. So, you know how people say you can use 5e for anything, but if you try to go really weird with it, it doesn't really work?
People who say you can use 5e for everything, it exclusively comes from the fact that actual play shows don't succeed if they don't run 5e. So Brennan Lee Mulligan and all these dudes are out here making 5e work for anything, proving it can work for anything. But the can is not a should, and I don't think most professional GMs would be doing it if not for the fact that their show wouldn't succeed as well if it weren't 5e.
Yes. And also, even for actual plays, they stick to fantasy. People have run D&D 5 for, like, sci-fi. I mean, that is a thing they are allowed to choose to do.
Because we didn't know.
I have not seen it go very well.
Because we didn't actually know back in the day that there were so many systems out there for all sorts of things. Kristen, who was on earlier, actually ran 5e for sci-fi at one point, and hard to know if it would have gone well long term. It was going well, but we had a player who was kind of a bad presence, so.
Mm-hmm. The main thing is it takes a lot of GM or work to try and Frankenstein D&D into working for things that aren't fantasy.
Yeah.
Not to say that you can't make a D20 system work well for sci-fi, just...
fucking Starfinder, it's great.
Yes.
It has
It's
huge
just
problems, especially with ship creation, but it's great.
yes. But if you start from D&D 5e, you're basically making a new D20 system from scratch if you want it to be mechanically satisfying in sci-fi.
Yeah, I mean, oh god, speaking of Dimension 20 earlier, they basically used a fan-made add-on that redoes most of 5e when they did a sci-fi season.
Yeah. Because 5e is 5e is a heroic fantasy game. Nothing wrong with that, but it runs heroic fantasy and not much else.
Even other genres of fantasy it does struggle with. Like, I've talked praise about Curse of Strahd as a horror game, but like it does take a lot of setting difficulty to make Curse of Strahd work. It requires a villain who doesn't want to kill the heroes right away, because introducing threats that are statistically strong enough and still build up horror and don't just kill the player right away, it's difficult. It is not built for that.
Yes, and even in Pathfinder 2, where the difficulty works, it's still difficult to do good horror because ultimately these are games about hitting shit.
Yeah.
The players see an enemy, they know that odds are they will eventually be able to hit that thing.
And they will be able to hit it so well that it will die.
With the exception of Pathfinder 2's Tarask, which is actually terrifying.
It is a horror monster. Hey, y'all, if y'all play 5e out there and you think, Tarask, that ain't no shit, Aarakocra level 1 with a bow, he killed that thing. No, he don't. The fucking Pathfinder 2 Tarask is so scary. I love it.
The maximum possible AC you could get in Pathfinder 2 is on a champion in full plate mail with a bunch of buffs set up and all this other stuff. A Tarask has a 50% crit chance against the maximum possible AC in the system.
Yep.
Not a 50% hit chance. Well, it has a 50% hit chance. A 50% crit chance on a monster that does... Let me just pull this up. I want to say, like, 4d10 of damage? Oh, no, sorry. It's only doing an average of about 5d12 plus 20 damage. So, just double that.
I despise the 5e Tarask. It ruins the good name of a great monster by being a pathetic, worthless husk of meaningless stats.
Yep. Meanwhile, 2e Tarask... I don't know of any party without really gremlin munchkinning the game that would be able to fight this thing and not TPK a lot of the time.
It is made to be basically unkillable, and it actually succeeds, and I respect the hell out of it.
Yes.
In almost every way, I do prefer 5e to 3.5. 3.5's Tarask, way better than 5e's Tarask. Same with Pathfinder
100%.
5e's Tarask is its worst feature. Oh, shit, I keep accidentally zooming out.
No, they should have... I think at least with 5e Tarask, the one thing they should have done as a minimum is, they should have made it so you still had to do the kill it, drop it to 0 health, then cast a wish spell to keep it dead thing.
Yeah, the fact that it doesn't keep coming back is so sad for something meant to be that powerful. Yes. The Tarask is a joke in 5th edition. Y'all kids out there don't know what you're missing with a real Tarask.
Yep.
Okay. As we crest towards the ending, is there anything other than Savage World that you'd recommend as a good entry point for role-playing games?
Yes. So, another set of games that I absolutely love, and I'm going to say a set of games because it's not just one. Yeah. The Forged in the Dark games. Blades in the Dark, Scum and Villainy. Scum and Villainy is what I've mostly played. Whole ton of them. They all use a very similar rule set, but they specialize in kind of episodic, very focused, more mission-based sessions. Meaning they're super great to just try out as a one-shot. Extremely rules light, very narrative focused, and very actiony, very punchy. Sessions in Forged in the Dark games move very quickly. Okay. So, Scum and Villainy is, again, what I'll use as a reference. Kind of generic Star Wars-y, like pulp sci-fi setting, right? Yeah. The whole thing with that is you are playing a team of 4 Han Solos doing Han Solo things. Like pre-episode 1 of Star Wars, or pre-episode 4 of Star Wars, Han Solo. That's your Scum and Villainy campaign. Every session is one mission. You do, or it can be one mission. In theory, you could do more, but that's what I've run with. You start off with, here's this place we need to go in and do whatever your mission is. All you decide on is how much gear are you bringing in. Are you doing light gear, medium, or light equipment, medium, heavy? You decide what's the general vibe. Are you going in sneaky, loud, quiet, whatever? DM rolls a dice. You cut straight to you're already in the middle of it.
Is this the one that that either inspired or the creator also made Blades in the Dark?
Yes. They are
okay, because I've been listening to the new season of the Adventure
Blades
Zone, and that's been coming up because that's a system.
Yeah. Scum and Villainy and Blades are both from the same developers.
Yeah, because I was about to say this reminded me of Blades in the Dark for the equip load, but also earlier for the speed that it maintains by dropping you right into the heist and making you use a flashback move to plan, because planning takes so fucking long in TTRPGs.
Yeah, so just cut that shit out and say your characters did it beforehand. It's
genius.
Super good for flow, and because the games are so rules light, you can seriously fit all of the Forged in the Dark game, most of their rules on one single piece of paper as a cheat sheet. They're really easy to learn, really easy to pick up and play. They flow well, and they get people to focus on what makes TTRPGs memorable, which is the role play, the action, the moving parts. Not that you can't have good fun with like slow, tense, like horror stuff. God knows so many people love Call of Cthulhu.
And it's made to be a molasses speed game because you can't do esoteric fear of the unknown quickly. That's not how it works.
Yeah, you gotta let that tension build, you know? Keep the monster off screen so your imagination can make it worse than it actually is, kind of thing.
Yeah. Although I will say a lot of the shit that's said about cosmic horror, having recently gotten into trying out Lovecraft stories to see what the hype is about, those fuckers get killed by shit all the goddamn time.
Yep.
Cthulhu's opening book, he gets hit with a boat and falls asleep.
Yep. To be fair, though, Cthulhu is fairly low on the Lovecraft power scale.
Yeah, he's a priest.
Yeah.
He's a demigod priest.
Yes.
I guess a quasi-god? What do you call a quarter?
I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know all
fucking
the intricacies on that. Yeah. It's not worth getting into.
He basically only caught on to the mascot because Tentacle Monster's spooky.
Yeah, and because, to be fair, he's an easier design than whatever the fuck Yogg-Sothoth has going on.
Or the fucking Dunwich Horror. That, ugh.
Yeah.
Try to draw that. Artists have. Good. There's a reason that none of the depictions look the same.
Alternatively, just gods, colors from outer space or colors from beyond space.
Yeah, great story. That's one of my favorites, actually.
I don't actually care for Lovecraft's own works, mostly because
He's terrible.
Lovecraft is a terrible person, and also I don't know the name for it, but it's kind of the same thing as like Shakespeare or Seinfeld, of all things to compare to, where I've seen so many riffs on the concepts that the originals no longer have any effect on me.
I will say that I think I picked the right place to start with Lovecraft, because had I started with Call of Cthulhu, I never would have gotten into it. You have to read it with the lens of this is a terrible and problematic man, otherwise, like you need to be aware of that to get any joy from it at all, otherwise you're going to be like, ooh, don't say that.
Yep. I mean, I also think you gotta like have some context on Lovecraft's life, but also like the dude was kicked out of his own author circles for being too racist and sexist in the 1920s.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair,
that should kind of tell you all you need to know.
To be fair, having read a lot of the books, or not books, short stories by the dude who wrote The King in Yellow, which is what inspired Lovecraft, he was really progressive for the time. Like, women were really well treated and were big players in his stories. Women were always very important in his works. And if he's the guy that inspired Lovecraft, I could see him being a very important social figure in their group. And their treatment of women as characters could not be more different, despite their similarities in going for cosmic horror. But what I was going to say is, of Lovecraft's works, I think a good place to start, the first two I started with, were Mountains of Madness and Innsmouth, which definitely are better reads than Call of Cthulhu, which I think is easily the worst of the stories I've read by Lovecraft. It's just bad.
Yeah.
Any other critique aside, thematically, the only consistent theme in it is race mixing is bad, which is not a good theme to hinge your cosmic horror on.
To be fair, a lot of that stuff with Lovecraft, not to be fair, fuck the guy, but
yeah.
Lovecraft's whole thing is the reason he did cosmic horror so well was because the man was terrified of literally everything.
Yeah.
This was the guy who his tutors growing up described him as not having the constitution for math. Which is why one of his entire stories is just about the man being piss terrified of an air conditioner.
God damn. If he was an author that, like, supporting him still gave him money and it wasn't public domain, I don't think I would be reading his books, but because it doesn't, I think it's worth checking into, if it's a type of thing that you like. But, like, you can definitely see that he was a very fearful man in how he writes about fear. But I think it does lead to very good and vivid descriptions of being afraid, and I think he did have a pretty genuine understanding of the incredibly dumb ways human beings would interact with magic and the unknown. I think there's an appeal there.
Oh, yeah.
I
No,
do
certainly
understand
agree.
anyone who says it's not for them, though, because it is a very specific taste.
That's putting it lightly, but yeah.
Well, I think I'm done here. Weird to end this conversation on Lovecraft, but I guess there
Oh,
are...
yeah.
Cthulhu is in Pathfinder, so it's not without
Yep.
precedent.
Oh, and other general systems to try.
Oh yeah, real quick, let's do that.
Try Powered by the Apocalypse games. I don't super love them, but any one of them is worth trying. City of Mist is pretty popular. Dungeon World is fantasy schlock, same as 5e Pathfinder if you're into that. Worth giving it a shot just to see what those games are like. Also, try an old school Renaissance game. I don't love all of them, but Worlds Without Number and Stars Without Number are free, and it gives you an interesting, very different take on fantasy and sci-fi than the more popular stuff. Gives you a
Nice.
different mindset.
While
Anyway.
while the video for YouTube watchers is now sweeping over the finished product of this, which I think is going to be about the same, I don't actually see much I need to fix. I'm going to quickly give a shout out to a game that I didn't bring up on my other games to try stream, which is Warhammer Age of Sigmar Soulbound. I really didn't want to like the Age of Sigmar setting because it's less grimdark than other Warhammer, which is kind of what I like about it. And it's what killed Warhammer Fantasy, which immediately makes me a bit salty because when I first started getting into it a couple years ago, Fantasy was my vehicle in. But it's a really simple, incredibly fun system. It moves quickly, and Age of Sigmar is such a wacky, fun, just dark enough, super high fantasy setting. So that's going to be my recommendation. So along with all of your recommendations, I'm just going to throw in Age of Sigmar Soulbound. Surprisingly fun.
Yep. Also, the only thing I could really think of for this is maybe coloring in the eyes, unless you meant to keep those red.
Yeah, I debated coloring in the eyes. Well, let's see quick. What if we just do a tiny bit of glowies? Actually, I like the tiny bit of glowies better. I like this better.
It gives them a bit more definition.
Yeah. This is pretty sick.
Yeah.
It's weird and kind of choppy, but I like how it turned out.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much for talking to me. And
Oh no, thanks for having me.
in the intro, I forgot to mention and meant to mention because self-promotion's important, that you came to me through the Discord because I posted an ad saying I'd give free art of people's characters if they sounded cool, and you showed up. And this is a cool character, and it was a great conversation.
Oh no, same to you. Thank you for the art, and nice talking to you, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So if any of you out here watching this on YouTube want free art of your characters, hop into the Discord server. There's a link below. If you come on and give me a pitch that I really like in the Pitch Your Character channel, I will have you on to talk about. Proof right here. I think that's about all. So I'm going to tune out for the night. It was lovely talking to you. Thank you so much for being on.
No, thank you for having me. Have a nice day, and talk to you all later.
Talk to everybody later. Have a good one. Like, comment, subscribe. You know what to do. It's a small channel. It'll help out. And good night.